So recently, Midas Touch, Prince Charming looking guy, the European fella. I don't recall his name, but he'll introduce himself, I'm sure. Brought up something I had not seen before, and I was tempted just to go to the clip, but I don't even know enough about sports to talk about this guy, so we're relying on them. Because a coach has been, apparently, bringing to ears that need to hear it a message of sanity. Have a look.
At what happened yesterday in Nashville at Covenant School and Covenant Presbyterian Church, and my family and I are grieving along with the rest of the community.
I couldn't believe it, so I wrote this thing down. This Senator Marsha Blackburn, her comment after the massacre. My office is in contact with federal, state, and local officials, and we stand ready to assist. In what? They're dead. What are you going to assist with? But they're going to cloak all this stuff, the myth of the Second Amendment, the freedom. It's a myth, it's a joke. It's just a game they play. I mean, that's freedom. Is it freedom for kids to go to school and try to socialize and try to learn and be scared to death that they might die that day? Well, that'll create a great environment. Is that freedom?
It's almost.
I mean, do you see? Do you see what I'm talking about? The coach of the Spurs. How many people are fans of that guy's team, do you reckon, that needed to hear this? That just needed to hear some straight talk? That the interpretation of the Second Amendment that so many people claim to care about is just pure nonsense. And the actual cost and the nonsense of Blackburn up there. I mean, it was a hell of a job. Clips in the description if you want to check it out without me yammering over it, but I happen to have a what you can do about it. So we're going to let it keep going.
Ritualistic in the wake of tragedy here in America that elected officials who could very well be doing something to help preserve the lives of children instead opt to hide behind hollow words, masquerade.
Also, come on. You see what I mean about Prince Charming? That's a Prince Charming haircut if I've ever seen one. Good God.
Rating as empathy.
I just grieve for what they're going through. We have to work to protect children at school, and that means increasing security. And I have had legislation that would allow for training and hiring of veterans and former law enforcement officials to serve as school safety officers and to help protect our schools. It is time for us to pass that and to help keep our children safe.
But what's also become a normality, but unfortunately doesn't get the airtime because it's not as sexy as discussing whether or not LeBron James is average, is higher with or without a headband. It's when Greg Popovich airs his feelings. The San Antonio Spurs coach understands the power of his platform and has used it many a times in the past to address pertinent issues across the United States. And in this instance, well, he calls out elected officials by name. He designated the first 10 minutes of his post-game press conference to calling out Republicans by name for the response to the Tennessee school shooting, or lack thereof.
I couldn't believe it, so I wrote this thing down. This Senator Marsha Blackburn, her comment after the massacre. My office is in contact with federal, state, and local officials, and we stand ready to assist. In what? They're dead. What are you going to assist with? Cleaning up their brains off the wall? Wiping the blood off the schoolroom floor? What are you going to assist with?
God damn. I mean, he's right, though. And it needs to be that visceral. It needs to be that disturbing, because it is that. I'm just waiting for a right-wing host to say, "Oh, how dare he? break decorum like that? How dare he talk like that at a press conference? Jesus God. One of the questions future generations will have for us is why we allowed kids to be killed. Because collectively, we have. Even those of us who've been fighting every step of the way, our whole lives, some of us, failed. Kids are still killed regularly. So this is the sort of thing I would expect and, in fact, demand to see everybody at every level of society speaking out about this, including right-wingers. Because, look, as just was demonstrated, I'll go hard on the lefties, myself included. But let's not get it twisted about whose responsibility this ultimately is. Where the left has failed is in demanding the right act like human beings, insisting that they act like decent human beings. And we're gonna talk about that more in a little bit. But let's let this man say his piece.
And then there's Governor Lee. I'm sorry to go on and on, but Bill Lee. I'm closely monitoring the tragic situation. Please join us in prayer. What are you monitoring? They're dead. Children. They're dead. Amendment to freedom. It's a myth. It's a joke. It's just a game they play. I mean, that's freedom. Is it freedom for kids to go to school and try to socialize and try to learn and be scared to death that they might die that day? But Ted Cruz will fix it because he's going to double the number of cops in the schools. That's what he wants to do. Well, that'll create a great environment. Is that freedom? Or is it freedom to have a congressman who could make a postcard with all his family holding rifles, including an AR-15 or whatever? Is that cool? Is that like street cred for a Republican? That's freedom? That's more important than protecting the kids? I don't get it. The greed of the gun lobbies and the manufacturers is obvious. We all know that. Money talks. But the cowardice and the selfishness of the legislators who are so scared to death of being primaried and losing their job, losing their power, losing their salary, you'd like to get each one of them in a room, just one by one, and say, what's more important to you? If you could vote for some good gun safety laws that most of the public agrees to, would you do that if it saved one kid? Or is your job and your money so important to you that you would say, screw the kid?
Now, as he usually does, Pop hits on several key areas here, none more so than politicians being anchored to the gun lobby. Now, Coach Popovich mentioned Marsha Blackburn here, who is one of Tennessee's 2 senators who has received $1.3 million from the NRA throughout her political career.
What happened yesterday in Nashville at Covenant School and Covenant Presbyterian Church, and my family and I are grieving along with the rest of the community, and I thank you.
Bullshit. They're not grieving. No, they're not. She has the ability to do something about this. She chooses not to. In fact, she chooses what she's doing right now by making this a debate over how many more armed people can we get inside schools with little kids in them. How many more guns can we put near our children? When she brings that up, she's actively working to make sure more kids get killed. She's not grieving with the rest of us. No, she is not.
Mr. Secretary, for your call yesterday, your kind remarks today, and violence against children is just one of the most.
Brutal editing.
I'm Marsha Blackburn. I stand for the Second Amendment
and I am so honored to be endorsed by the NRA.
Yeah, let's leave that up there for a moment. An NRA endorsement. Long term, this is what I want to work on with y'all. An NRA endorsement needs to mean you are for the death of children. Even if the NRA tomorrow starts themselves advocating for gun reform because they see the writing on the wall and they decide to, pull a comics code authority, essentially, and get some legislation in there that restricts how bad they can be before we do it for them. Maybe that's what they do. This fourth branch of the government that has wormed its way in against our will. Maybe. But even if they do that, there's no changing the fact that for the last 30 years, however long it's been since Columbine, 25 years? Doesn't change the fact that all of the school shootings since then, all the dead kids, the NRA had a hand in. So, one of the goals of this channel will be now to tie the NRA to the dead kids at every opportunity and make it clear that any politician advertising that they are endorsed by the NRA is themselves advertising that they help kill kids, because that is the truth. Let's let Midas keep doing its amazing work here. This is, I think, the best video they've put out in months.
Guns, well, they represent identity to the GOP. They act as a symbol of rebellion to them and Republican voters. That's why you see them constantly discuss them in campaign ads attacking Democrats. People like Marsha Blackburn, well, they know that, especially in the wake of tragedy, because there's a fear that that identity will be chipped away at. Think about it, only 37% of Republicans support assault weapons bans, and only 43% support a government database to track gun sales. Meanwhile, nationally, well, these restrictions have a much higher polling rate of around 63%. So yes, while the NRA plays a huge part financially, to me, it's more so their contribution to identity that codifies guns as the symbol of the Republican Party. And the best way to chip away at that identity is to vote, especially in places like this.
And so once again, what you're saying to us, since you're trying to put us on trial, I'll say what you're really putting on trial is the state of Tennessee. What you're really showing for the world is holding up a mirror to a state that is going back to some dark, dark roots. A state in which the Ku Klux Klan was founded is now attempting another power grab by silencing the two youngest Black representatives and one of the only women, Democratic women in this body. That's what this is about.
Where we need young leaders combating that identity in red states.
Ooh, I caught it, baby. One moment. Lots of notes. Lots of notes. Still a great video. All right, starting with the end there, that young leaders comment. We don't need young leaders. I like this new generation. Like them a lot. In fact, I will be more forgiving of Gen Z. I will be hugely supportive by default of any Gen Z politician that I see, because I'm so impressed with this younger generation. But what we need is not youth in Congress. What we need is new voices in Congress. There's a huge difference there. There's plenty of people who have been in this country their whole lives, not involved in any way with politics, who need to get involved with politics. It's functionally very similar But I just want to clarify that point because I think it's an important distinction. And case in point, I give you John Fetterman. The man has found a way to be useful even as he was experiencing literally crippling depression. He found a way to be useful. He's helped people who themselves have had, what was it? It wasn't a seizure. It was an aneurysm? Whatever the hell. A brain injury that led to depression. Well, he was brave enough on a national stage to talk about that, to explain what happened, and yes, to take the time he needed to recover and show us how it's done. It's incredibly, incredibly helpful. All right, going back, Greg Popovich talking about the NRA lobby. Once upon a time, talking about the money was restricted basically to the fringes. It wasn't the kind of thing I used to ever hear as being part of the conversation. At best, I would hear euphemisms, and my God, how wonderful is it that freaking coach of the San Antonio Spurs is out there saying, yeah, these punks take NRA money and they kill our kids for it. Yes, well done, Popovich. Well done. What was the third point? Yes, gorgeous haircut. Good God almighty. So, no, there was that other point. The 63% he was talking about. Oh, the left. The left can't wait to pat 63% of Republicans on the back. And by the way, I'm no different. I'll go back to it, certainly, because that's a commendable opinion to have, except, where are they? 63% of Republican voters supposedly are for reasonable gun reform. Why don't I see them out there demanding it? Do you think the people that the lefties put in office need more motivation to vote this way or that? We're here trying to say, oh, their tactics need to be better. Their tactics need to be sharper. Okay. Why do they have any opposition at all to overcome? Republicans will also be aware of that 63% number. And they're aware of an additional fact, which is those 63% that say they're for reasonable gun reform aren't for it enough that they're willing to withhold a vote. They're more for harassing teenage girls outside of an abortion clinic. They're more for that than they are for saving the little kids. They're more for making sure black people have worse lives than they could. Than they're for saving kids. They're more for making sure Jeff Bezos can buy his 57th yacht and his employees are on food stamps than they are for saving kids. They're more for making sure the President of the United States is never subject to a criminal investigation when they commit a crime than they are for saving kids. I will not take a Republican voter seriously, and nor will the rest of the world, until we start seeing them coming out as Republican voters leading protests, not joining up and occasionally having a local news person saying, oh, and this person says they voted for Bush and then Trump one time, just one time, and Mitch McConnell a bunch of times, but they're here today in this march. Well, good for you, single Republican voter that they found in that crowd. Good for you. Lead one. Because just like what the left isn't doing is enough, what the right is doing is not nearly enough. And in fact, if the right insisted, if the voting populace on the right insisted, if that 63% was an actual number that actually reflected their values, and if they ever want to be someone I am capable of respecting, then they better get out there and lead some protests. They better block some senators' driveways. They better get loud. They can't wait to take a gun to a peaceful BLM protest and try to goad somebody into giving them a chance to finally, I don't know, get off, I guess. But they won't march up with their gun and say, there should be, hey, Senator, look at this. There should be reasonable restrictions on this. Because let me tell you, Senator, this could kill a whole crowd of people. This thing in my hands right now could end many, many, many lives very quickly. Yours would be the first of a few dozen before I had to reload. That would make me actually consider the fact that they were, serious adults. But they're not serious adults. I've seen no evidence that they're serious adults, and they should not be treated as such. GOP voters, Republican voters, if you want to know, I hear you all the time whining that people don't take you seriously. It's just filling your diapers and getting red-faced. People don't take you seriously. This is why. This is one of a couple of things that you'd have to do for the rest of the adults in the world to, bother giving a damn about your opinion. Because you have demonstrated that your priorities are bad and they are not worthy of respect. And you have such an aggressively ignorant understanding of how the world works that you are willing to let children die over it. And apart from the soul-warping knowledge that children will die again soon, just like at Uvalde, just like at this most recent massacre, just like at Columbine, apart from that knowledge that we're carrying around here in the real world, we also have the knowledge that you, at any moment, could choose to change this by demanding it from your politicians, who are the ones that are causing it. And every day you wake up and you make the choice instead to get mad about Mr. Potato Head. That's who you are in our eyes. So what can you do? Well, right-wingers, you want to gain anything resembling respect during your remaining years on Earth from the rest of us. And by the way, this MAGA madness, it's wearing out. It's ending. If not this year, then next. If not next year, then the one after. But America has demonstrated it doesn't have patience for you. So if, during the rest of your lives, you don't want to be viewed as the shameful wretches you have demonstrated yourselves to be, then stop acting like that. Get out there and protest for gun reform. Lefties, keep doing what you're doing. Keep the pressure up. And if you are a friend of a right-winger, ask them why they don't protest for reasonable gun reform. Because apparently 63% of them believe in reasonable gun reform. I sure as hell don't see it.